You feel steady, yet your reactions are quietly programmed against you. Someone builds confusion inside you, then offers calm as a borrowed gift. If you want freedom from silent control, study what hides here. The method begins with a simple aim: break your inner rhythm without warning. When rhythm breaks, the mind seeks anchors. Any anchor feels safer than chaos. The manipulator understands this need and designs storms that only they can calm. They manufacture tension, then sell relief, shaping dependence while calling it help. You think relief is rescue, yet it only rewards the person creating pressure. This is the oldest loop in hidden control. Chaos followed by heroic repair. The first lever is disruption of certainty, because certainty guides healthy choices. Remove certainty, and your decision-making shifts from values to immediate relief. They target small routines because small routines guard bigger boundaries without noise. Interrupt your sleep window, flood your schedule, alter expected replies, distort predictable transitions. You feel slightly off balance, so you seek guidance, preferably from the loudest voice. The loudest voice then claims wisdom, while quietly hiding the original disruption source. The second lever is meaning confusion, because humans resist what they cannot name. They blur definitions, and the blur hides responsibility while you question your senses. Words change shape inside conversations. Promises turn into suggestions. Suggestions become misunderstood memories. You try to clarify, yet the target keeps moving, so certainty slips further. This is not debate. It is engineered fog, designed to tire and soften. Soft minds stop fighting ideas. They accept simple instructions that promise quick peace. The third lever is intermittent validation, because inconsistent rewards bind deeper than steady praise. They give approval in unexpected bursts, then withdraw warmth without clear cause. Your brain hunts the next signal, and guessing becomes a silent, full-time job. This schedule burns energy, and tired minds follow whoever offers low-effort clarity. The manipulator keeps the switch hidden, so you chase patterns that never settle. Hope survives on thin threads, while standards slide downward in quiet, measurable steps. The fourth lever is time pressure, because rushed people trade accuracy for quick relief. They frame choices as urgent. They exaggerate clocks. They compress space for thinking. Rushed thinking prefers shortcuts, and shortcuts favor the person holding prepared answers. You pick the nearest path, then defend it, because sunk effort resists reversal. They applaud your speed, then remind you of earlier mistakes, tying you to guidance. The loop tightens, and the helper image grows, while your independence quietly shrinks. The fifth lever is isolation of feedback, not isolation of people. Note carefully. They do not always remove others. They simply reduce trusted mirrors of truth. A mirror can be a habit, a journal, or a principled mentor. They belittle your mirrors or flood you with bonus mirrors that reflect distortions. You still feel surrounded, yet honest calibration becomes rare and errors compound faster. Calibration loss makes ordinary stress appear fatal, so their guidance feels like oxygen. The sixth lever is moral inversion, turning your kindness into proof of your guilt. When you protest, they frame your protest as selfishness and your calm as coldness. You start defending your nature rather than evaluating the real demand presented. Attention moves from the issue to your character, and the issue vanishes. Now you try to be good when you should try to be accurate. Accuracy threatens the system. Goodness under confusion keeps the system alive. Study the structure, not the surface, because surfaces always look reasonable and kind. The structure begins with chaos injection, then moves to narrative capture, then repair performance. Chaos injection creates a wound. Narrative capture defines its meaning. Repair performance secures gratitude. You feel grateful for relief while missing the hidden invoice attached to gratitude. That invoice demands compliance later, paid with silence, favors, or lowered boundaries. Each payment becomes precedent, and precedent turns into presumed consent within future moments. Notice how the system protects itself through preemptive framing of your reactions. If you question patterns, they call it overthinking and sell simplicity as medicine. If you request evidence, they call it distrust and sell loyalty as medicine. If you set time to reflect, they call it avoidance and sell urgency as medicine. The cure always leads back to them, never to your internal compass. By design, every door out appears rude, reckless, or ungrateful to someone. Watch the small tells because grand gestures distract, while tells show stable machinery. A tell appears when the source of chaos also owns the stopwatch. They decide when discomfort peaks, and they decide when relief suddenly appears. Suffering follows their schedule, and calm follows their speech, not your independent action. Another tell appears when solutions arrive without diagnosis, like magic wrapped in kindness. Real care asks questions gently. Manipulation delivers finished answers before listening even starts. Energy accounting reveals the toll, and emotional predators count on poor accounting. Measure how you feel before interactions and after interactions, across several cycles. If clarity consistently drops while gratitude weirdly rises, you are inside a loop. If you apologize more while understanding less, you are inside a loop. If you rely on permission for ordinary thoughts, you are inside a loop. Loops feed on attention, so your focused worry becomes fuel for future control. Listen to your body signals, because biology reports truth faster than arguments. Tight shoulders, shallow breathing, restless scanning, and sudden relief after their messages. The relief teaches you to seek them, not to seek first principles. First principles are calm questions, clear definitions, and slow checks against reality. Predators cannot thrive where definitions stabilize, and clocks obey honest priorities. So they hustle your attention away from definitions and trade clocks for alarms. The repair performance deserves careful analysis because it sells the entire illusion. They might apologize, yet the apology defines your concern as a misread tension. They offer grand help, yet the help ignores the original design of chaos. They invite you to rely on future promises instead of restoring current boundaries. Reliance deepens, and loyalty stories replace actual fixes, while control grows quietly. The repair looks like healing, but it only resets the arena for repetition. Many people ask why they fall for this, even with strong minds. The answer is not weakness. The answer is engineered use of human wiring. Humans seek patterns. Humans avoid isolation. Humans calm faster with immediate relief. The manipulator trades in these truths, then labels exploitation as education or care. You can respect human needs while refusing the trap that weaponizes those needs. Awareness does not remove kindness. Awareness brings boundaries that keep kindness from bleeding. Consider the triangle of control: chaos, comfort, and credit. Create the sides. Chaos breaks confidence, comfort restores calm, credit cements authority for future directives. Remove any side and the triangle weakens, and autonomy returns quickly. Reduce chaos by stabilizing routines yourself without asking permission from that voice. Rebuild comfort using neutral practices like breathing, movement, and measured reflection time. Redirect credit back to reality, where your actions create outcomes, not theirs. Signals of emotional drain share a common root: recurring energy debt with confusion. You spend more time explaining yourself than understanding the actual matter. You doubt instincts that once served you and borrow beliefs to feel safe. Your plans shrink to avoid conflict, while conflicts somehow never truly end. You accept endless training, yet the standard always shifts just after achievement. You comfort the person who hurt you and call it maturity and growth. Another sign hides in language that always centers your supposed improvement plan. The plan praises you for progress, then blames your nature for every delay. Shame links to your identity, while the issue stays forever unresolved. You try harder, not smarter, because guilt blocks quiet analysis and calibration. Calibration needs stillness and data, while guilt demands speed and endless proof. As proof grows, the target grows too, so your fuel keeps burning. Observe the bait of special knowledge, the whisper that only they understand you. Scarcity language appears, suggesting safety exists inside the relationship with that voice. They grant access to insider rules, which sound deep but avoid clear testing. Test is the enemy of manipulation, because tests remove mystery from power. Power without mystery looks ordinary, and ordinary claims invite healthy comparison. Comparison invites better options, while manipulation survives only by blinding better options. Defenses must be quiet and steady, because dramatic exits feed the loop. Set definitions before discussions, then hold them, regardless of emotional temperature rising. Ask slow questions and repeat them until answers match stable definitions. Request examples, then timelines, then measurable criteria before accepting any sweeping claim. Inspect who benefits if you act fast and who benefits if you pause. Choose the path that returns credit to real causes, not scripted rescues. Place your attention on predictable practices, because predictability starves chaos of oxygen. Sleep at consistent hours, guard breaks, and plan small daily reflection blocks. Keep a record of promises, not for punishment, only for clarity checks. Clarity reduces alarms, alarms lose power, and manipulation loses its favorite weather. Talk to neutral mirrors. who reward honesty, not performance or compliance. Neutral mirrors strengthen your internal reference, so borrowed authority feels less impressive. Remember that refusing confusion is not aggression. It is informed self-respect. You are allowed to pause even when someone calls pause an act of harm. You are allowed to verify even when someone labels verification as betrayal. You are allowed to choose slow language even when someone demands speed. Slow language reveals structure, and structure reveals who benefits from every choice. When benefits are clear, gratitude returns to truth, and relief becomes real. The hidden manual ends each cycle with one last protective illusion. They convince you the chaos was accidental, and the repair proves goodness. You forgive the pattern, not the moment, and the stage resets cleanly. A stronger boundary feels rude, so you trade it for another explanation. Explanations can be kind, yet boundaries protect kindness from becoming a leash. A leash covered in silk still binds, and soft chains still control. Ask one hard question when calm. Who controls the weather of our interactions? If one person always carries the umbrella and the storm, note the pattern. Healthy influence shares umbrellas and welcomes forecasts from anyone with real data. Unhealthy influence keeps the storm machine hidden and calls umbrellas a special favor. You never owed your peace to the person who sells it back. Your peace returns when you stop renting calm from the source of chaos. The next reveal demands courage because it exposes the deepest switch of all. What happens when the chaos stops working and they need a stronger cage? You escaped the first storm, but the weather was only a test. Your resistance was measured, not defeated, and the system is adjusting. The next phase begins when chaos alone no longer bends your inner compass. The hidden switch is escalation of subtle pressure into emotional architecture. Instead of random storms, the manipulator now designs a climate, not events. A climate shapes your worldview, so control becomes belief, not reaction. When belief changes, you will monitor yourself and call it growth. Self-monitoring feels noble, but in this design, it replaces self-direction. Direction without inner authorship becomes obedience wearing the mask of maturity. To build this climate, they need deeper levers, beyond confusion and relief. The next lever is identity disruption, targeting who you think you are. Identity guides choices faster than logic, so changing identity reshapes obedience. They start small, questioning your natural traits, calling them outdated or unsafe. Doubt enters the root system, and you start self-editing without instruction. When you edit yourself to stay acceptable, a silent leash is already attached. The second advanced lever is value hijacking, a quiet rewrite of your inner scoreboard. Value hijacking replaces what you used to prize with what they reward. Suddenly calm matters less than approval. Clarity matters less than harmony. Truth becomes secondary because peace with them feels like proof of goodness. They praise you when you bend, not when you think, and the mind tracks rewards. Soon you confuse agreement with wisdom and disagreement with personal failure. The third advanced lever is emotional debt, a currency stronger than logic. They do unasked favors, exaggerated gestures, timed apologies, strategic empathy. Each gesture creates invisible obligation, because humans repay kindness faster than harm. You start calculating what you owe, even when no debt was spoken aloud. Guilt becomes the interest rate, and interest grows when you hesitate to comply. You no longer ask if the request is fair. You only ask if refusal is rude. The fourth advanced lever is narrative merging, blending your story with their mission. The boundaries blur, so your wins feel like their guidance, not your agency. Your mistakes feel shared, but your victories feel borrowed. Shared victories build loyalty. Shared mistakes build dependence. The story sounds like partnership, yet the script has only one writer. Merged narratives erase the exit door, because leaving feels like self-betrayal. The fifth advanced lever is redefined freedom, a paradox wrapped in praise. They present compliance as liberation, claiming rules protect your higher self. They present independence as danger, claiming freedom attracts chaos and regret. When rules feel like safety and questioning feels like rebellion, captivity looks noble. This is not force. This is reframing, the most elegant cage ever built. A cage you defend becomes a lifestyle, not a prison. The sixth advanced lever is selective chaos withdrawal, the calm test. They give long stretches of peace to prove you were wrong about the pattern. You think healing finally arrived and resistance feels paranoid. The body relaxes because fear is expensive and peace feels earned. Then one tiny disruption returns and you panic faster than before. Panic proves dependence has matured because calm now relies on their stability. Notice the evolution. Early control attacked your decisions. Now it shapes your meaning. Early loops forced reaction. Now loops shape identity, values, debts, and stories. This is not control of behavior. This is control of self-definition. A self that doubts its own compass will borrow direction forever. Borrowed direction comes with terms, and terms always shift in favor of the lender. The lender of calm becomes the owner of your emotional landscape. The emotional predator now studies your resistance patterns. They check which words silence you, which doubts freeze you, which praise moves you. Your responses become data, your fears become tools, your needs become hooks. Each hook is sharpened through repetition, then pulled gently so you call it guidance. You assume shared humanity, they assume usable leverage. Assumptions decide who learns and who extracts. Resistance still exists, but it changes shape. You do not argue. You just feel tired, guilty, or confused at the wrong moments. Fatigue replaces refusal, apology replaces analysis, avoidance replaces boundary. This is silent surrender, the kind that keeps pride intact while surrender deepens. The predator prefers this form because silence looks peaceful, yet control grows louder. Peace without clarity is only quiet exhaustion. Look for the hidden ruler of emotions, who decides when you are allowed to feel what. Your joy must be justified, your anger must be softened, your sadness must be redirected. Soon you ask for permission to feel, not for logic to judge. When someone edits your emotions, they edit your inner truth filter. Truth becomes secondary to emotional approval, and approval is owned by one source. That is not influence, that is internal colonization. Energy becomes the new battlefield, not logic. A drained person obeys, a restored person questions. So they drain you with uncertainty, then restore you with selective empathy. This rhythm builds addiction, because the body remembers relief more than pain. Addiction to emotional relief looks like loyalty, sounds like trust, and feels like devotion. But devotion born from exhaustion is only captivity shaped like gratitude. You will notice the script when silence feels dangerous. Healthy silence repairs. Trapped silence waits for permission. When you fear your own thoughts without external guidance, note the breach. A captured mind treats solitude like punishment and noise like safety. The predator wants that reaction because noise can be scripted, silence cannot. Scripted minds cannot revolt, they can only recycle borrowed beliefs. Observe how language shifts when control advances. Questions become accusations, doubts become disrespect, logic becomes coldness. Your calm reasoning becomes framed as detachment. Your pause becomes neglect. They assign motives to your silence, then demand emotional proof to clear your name. The moment you start proving your heart, the debate is already lost. Proof of heart is a rigged contest because the judge owns the scoreboard. The antidote begins with separation of state, mood, and meaning. State is physical, mood is emotional, meaning is narrative. Predators blend the three so you mistake discomfort for truth. But a tired body can feel guilt without logic and relief without wisdom. Separate the layers and the spell weakens because confusion needs fusion. Clarity returns when each layer reports its own data. Track 3 questions in every emotional spike. What changed in my environment? Who benefits if I react fast? What belief about myself is being triggered right now? When answers align toward one figure, recalibrate before speaking. Manipulation hates delayed responses because delay restores neural ownership. Ownership breaks the climate, and climates collapse when not constantly fed. You cannot fight this with louder emotion, only with quieter definition. Define what matters without asking if it pleases them. Define how you measure respect without waiting for their approval. Define which discomfort is worth enduring and which is manufactured. Definition is rebellion here, because it ends emotional outsourcing. Emotional outsourcing is how predators lease space inside your identity. Next comes the extraction phase, when they demand proof of loyalty in concrete form. Maybe not objects, but sacrifices, reductions, rearranged priorities, abandoned mirrors. Each sacrifice confirms the climate is working, and your independence is dissolving. They will frame sacrifice as devotion, and devotion as destiny. Destiny is the heaviest word in the manipulator dictionary, because it makes refusal immoral. Immoral refusal traps the mind faster than logical debate ever could. You will notice a final pattern. The reward for obedience shrinks slowly. What once earned praise now earns neutrality, and you chase the old reward. Praise becomes scarce. Loyalty becomes hungry, and hunger tightens the leash. Scarcity is not failure of the system. Scarcity is the system. People addicted to emotional approval never feel finished, only waiting. Waiting gives infinite time to the predator, and 0 time to the self. The hidden twist is simple. You were never asked to think less, only to think later. Delay thinking long enough, and you replace reason with reflex. Reflex shaped by someone else becomes loyalty without reflection. Loyalty without reflection feels pure, but purity without choice is only programming. Programming that uses your best traits against you: kindness, patience, willingness to learn. Your virtues become your shackles when sharpened by the wrong hands. Pause here and ask the forbidden question: what happens when the emotional debt is fully collected? What new currency will they demand when loyalty no longer satisfies? The next phase is darker because it stops pretending to fix anything at all. You think the game is still about harmony, but the rules have shifted. The debt is almost collected, the leash is nearly invisible, and the real harvest is ready. The next phase begins when your loyalty is proven and your doubt is silent. The predator no longer needs storms. Now they harvest outcomes. Control stops being preparation and starts becoming extraction. Extraction is not about emotion anymore, it is about direction of your life force. Your time, your focus, your goals, your decisions all become rented property. You still feel free, but your choices follow a script you did not write. Freedom without authorship is only a decorative illusion. The first extraction lever is goal distortion, replacing your mission with their agenda. They nudge you away from independent goals, calling them risky, selfish, or unrealistic. Then they offer a shared vision, safe, noble, and perfectly aligned with their benefit. You begin to trade personal dreams for borrowed purpose and call it unity. Unity sounds sacred until you notice you are the only one sacrificing. Shared purpose without shared cost is quiet exploitation. The second extraction lever is responsibility transfer, disguised as trust. They hand you tasks that protect their image, solve their problems, guard their comfort. You feel honored, because responsibility feels like proof of value. But value here is measured by compliance, not contribution. Soon you carry burdens that never belong to you and apologize when you drop them. Emotional predators never ask if you are able, only if you are willing. The third extraction lever is boundary inversion, turning your limits into flaws. When you say no, they question your loyalty. When you need space, they question your care. When you ask for balance, they question your maturity. The more you defend your limits, the more they frame the limit as betrayal. Once boundaries feel like guilt, you will remove them yourself. The fourth extraction lever is identity tax, charging you for staying authentic. Any trait that resists control is labeled dramatic, stubborn, or broken. You start smoothing your edges, shrinking your voice, editing your instincts. Authenticity becomes expensive, so you choose the cheaper mask. The mask wins praise, the self pays the bill, and exhaustion becomes a second skin. No one forces the mask, you simply learn which face survives. The fifth extraction lever is comparison warfare, using others as silent weapons. They mention how others are more loyal, more grateful, more aligned. You start competing for approval in a race that never ends. Comparison isolates you from your own reality, making their judgment the scoreboard. You shrink, they rise, and the imbalance feels deserved. Deserved imbalance is the signature of advanced control. The sixth extraction lever is loyalty inflation, demanding more proof with less gratitude. Small sacrifices become normal, so larger sacrifices now look reasonable. They keep raising the cost of belonging while lowering the reward for staying. You chase a version of approval that no longer exists, but once did. Memory of early affection becomes the bait and hope becomes the leash. The mind survives on hope, even when hope survives on lies. Notice the evolution: early control shaped reactions, mid-control reshaped identity, and late control extracts resources. The predator is no longer interested in chaos or repair, only return on investment. Your obedience is now infrastructure, not negotiation. This is the stage where you no longer ask, "Is this right?" You only ask, "What will they think?" Once self-evaluation is replaced with external approval, autonomy becomes fiction. Fiction feels safe when reality feels dangerous. You will spot the extraction phase when silence stops being peaceful. Instead of tension before chaos, you feel pressure before requests. Ordinary tasks feel urgent. Ordinary choices feel judged. You ask permission before acting, even when permission was not requested. That is the moment the cage is inside you, not around you. Internal cages require no guards, only habits. The emotional drain deepens, but now it feels logical. You explain their behavior for them, justify their demands, excuse their pressure. You turn their neglect into your lesson and their need into your duty. Self-blame is cheaper than confrontation, so the mind buys it in bulk. Guilt keeps you loyal, confusion keeps you slow, hope keeps you quiet. This trio is the holy engine of extraction. The predator tests your breaking point by shrinking rewards into tokens. A single kind word replaces a full apology, and you feel grateful. One small smile replaces real respect, and you feel restored. You start celebrating crumbs because crumbs once followed storms. But storms are gone. Crumbs are now the reward, and your standards forget the difference. Starved values always feel full from tiny servings. The deepest trap is gratitude conditioning, where you thank the person draining you. They give nothing new, only return what was always yours. Your time, your rest, your clarity, your peace handed back in small fragments. You mistake restoration for generosity, forgetting they took it first. This is the reverse magician trick. They steal openly, return silently, and earn praise. Praise becomes the leash you willingly polish. Listen carefully. Every extraction system has a saturation point. Saturation arrives the moment you have nothing left to offer but yourself. When resources dry, identity becomes the final harvest. They reshape your worldview to align with their survival, not yours. You begin to defend their control, call it destiny, and reject any rescue. The perfect prisoner protects the lock. Yet even in this stage, one question can still break the design. Why does peace depend on pleasing one source instead of living one truth? Truth is the only currency they cannot counterfeit. But truth requires distance, and distance requires disloyalty to the lie. The mind fears betrayal more than captivity, and they exploit that fear. But betrayal of a lie is the first loyalty to yourself. The next reveal is darker, because it answers a silent question. What happens when the predator no longer needs you whole, only useful? The system is ready for its final form, where the self becomes optional. You still believe the goal is balance, but balance was never the target. The predator does not want your harmony, only your function. You are no longer a person to them. You are a system they learn to operate. This is the phase where the self is no longer required, only the output. The predator has already shaped your reactions, rewritten your values, and extracted your loyalty. Now the final shift begins, the slow deletion of your independent identity. The first erasure lever is self-doubt automation, where you question yourself before they do. Your mind runs silent checks, asking if your thoughts are acceptable, not if they are true. You censor feelings before sharing them. You soften language before deciding it. Internal editing becomes automatic, so the predator no longer needs to correct you. Self-correction replaces external control, and the system becomes self-sustaining. A captured mind saves the captor energy. The second erasure lever is emotional flattening, removing intensity from your inner world. Intense joy feels unsafe. Intense anger feels forbidden. Intense clarity feels rebellious. You begin to live in neutral, not calm, just muted. Muted emotions feel mature, but they are only numbness branded as wisdom. Numbness is not peace. Numbness is absence of self. A quiet heart is not always a healed heart. The third erasure lever is belief substitution, where your deeper principles get silently replaced. You stop saying, "I think," and start saying, "I guess you are right." You stop measuring actions by ethics and start measuring them by approval. Approval becomes morality, agreement becomes virtue, obedience becomes proof of character. Principles without internal origin are not principles. They are scripts. A scripted conscience cannot rebel. It can only perform. The fourth erasure lever is timeline collapse, destroying your memory of what was normal. You forget how you used to feel, how you used to decide, how you used to resist. The predator does not erase the past, they just flood the present until past feels distant. Constant adaptation replaces reflection, so history stops being a reference. When you cannot compare, you cannot question. When you cannot question, you will protect the very thing that broke you. The fifth erasure lever is blame redirection, where every fracture is somehow your fault. They never say it directly, but the weight always rolls your way. You believe you are the variable that needs fixing, adjusting, controlling. You take responsibility for reactions engineered by someone else. You fix the symptoms, they preserve the cause. You clean what they keep spilling. The sixth erasure lever is identity merging, the endpoint of narrative capture. You use their language, think in their definitions, crave their reassurance. Your boundaries feel negotiable, your instincts feel suspicious, your voice feels loud. Their worldview becomes the default operating system in your mind. Once the operating system is installed, the user becomes irrelevant. Irrelevant minds do not resist, they only function. This is where emotional predators become architects, not actors. They no longer persuade, they simply expect, and the expectation becomes command. You anticipate, you adjust, you preserve. Obedience turns proactive, not reactive. You run the cage even when they are not present. That is the point when control has achieved permanence. Watch the physical signs, because the body exposes what the mind rationalizes. You feel tired after small decisions. You need permission to rest. You wait for mood signals to act. Your nervous system reacts faster to their tone than to your own needs. You scan for danger where none exists except inside one person's approval. A single disappointed sigh feels heavier than your entire inner truth. That is not care. That is nervous system dependence. The predator may now switch to selective neglect. The final test. They withdraw attention, not to free you, but to measure collapse. If you chase them, the system is complete. If you freeze, the system is stable. If you break yourself trying to restore connection, the harvest is ready. Connection should not feel like survival. This phase also introduces controlled abandonment, abandoning you at the peak of confusion. You feel lost, guilty, desperate to prove loyalty. You try harder, offer more, bend further. They return only when you have lowered yourself enough to be manageable again. Pain becomes proof of devotion, and devotion becomes your identity. Identity fused with suffering cannot imagine freedom without guilt. The final lever is replacement threat, the illusion of someone waiting to take your place. They praise imaginary loyalty in others, hint at better versions of you. Scarcity of importance destabilizes your worth, and dependence deepens. You fear being replaced more than being controlled. Fear of replacement chains you faster than chains of affection ever could. A person willing to shrink for acceptance has already disappeared. In this stage, the predator no longer fixes chaos. They withdraw chaos and observe. They want to see if you collapse without their correction. If you cannot self-stabilize, you are fully trained. If your identity needs their approval to exist, the leash is complete. They do not own your feelings anymore. They own your self-image. Self-image is the strongest prison ever built. But even here, a crack remains. The mind cannot erase its original blueprint fully. It can only bury it. Sometimes a memory, a question, a calm moment, a mirror reactivates the old self. Even a small flicker of clarity is a threat to the system. Because once you remember who you were, compliance stops feeling like peace. And when peace stops feeling real, obedience starts feeling expensive. Prepare for the darkest twist of all. What happens when you finally see the cage, but the predator has already moved inside your belief system? You finally see the cage, but the cage is now inside you. The predator no longer pulls the strings. Your own mind does the work. Freedom feels dangerous. Obedience feels familiar. And that is the final trap. This phase is not about control. It is about substitution. Your original self is muted, and a trained version runs your life. The predator does not need to speak, because their voice echoes in your thoughts. You defend their methods, justify their motives, rewrite your pain as growth. When your mind protects the hand that shaped it, the system becomes immortal. The first substitution lever is belief ownership. You think the ideas are yours, but they were installed through repetition and reward. You argue in their language, measure worth by their scale, judge yourself by their standards. You are not following orders anymore. You are following identity. Identity shaped by someone else is invisible control in its purest form. The second substitution lever is fear of freedom. Freedom feels unsafe because it lacks external approval. You hesitate to act unless someone confirms your direction. Doubt is no longer a moment, it is your base state. A doubtful mind prefers cages with rules over landscapes without maps. This is how control survives, even in the absence of the controller. The third substitution lever is emotional loyalty. You feel protective of the person who drained you. You defend them to others because criticism feels like an attack on your own story. You are not loyal to the person. You are loyal to the version of you that stayed for them. Breaking free feels like betraying yourself, not them. That illusion keeps you seated long after the chains are gone. The fourth substitution lever is meaning reversal. Suffering becomes proof of purpose. Exhaustion becomes proof of strength. You attach dignity to endurance instead of clarity to boundaries. Your worth becomes tied to how much you can tolerate, not how much you understand. The predator taught you that survival equals love, so you survive harder every day. But survival without direction is just slow erosion. The fifth substitution lever is inner censorship. You do not need to be silenced because you silence yourself. You avoid certain thoughts, certain questions, certain comparisons. You call it peace, but it is fear wearing calm clothing. True calm allows questions. False calm punishes them. If your calm is fragile, it is not calm, it is control. This is the phase where the predator can leave and the system still runs. Control has become culture. Dependence has become identity. Exhaustion has become normal. They no longer punish disobedience. You punish yourself for even thinking it. That is the moment the predator wins without being present. Yet even here, the mind leaves escape hatches. You sense it when silence feels heavy instead of healing. You sense it when your body relaxes around truth, not approval. You sense it when you question why instead of how do I please. Truth always returns, because the original self is not dead, only buried. The exit does not begin with rebellion. It begins with definition. Define what you feel without judging it. Define what you need without apologizing for it. Define what you believe without borrowing language from anyone else. Definition breaks substitution, because the system depends on blurred meaning. Do not wait for permission to heal. Do not wait for closure from the person who profits from your confusion. Do not wait for the perfect moment to leave the pattern. Patterns never release you. Patterns only recycle you. When clarity returns, it will not feel like victory. It will feel like grief. Grief for time lost, self-abandoned, peace rented, identity borrowed. But grief is proof you are waking up. A numb mind cannot grieve. Only a living mind can. The real question is not how to expose the predator. The real question is how to stop being the version they constructed. Because the final stage of control is not their power over you. It is your inherited obedience to their design. And once you dismantle that inner design, the system collapses without protest. Because no predator can survive inside a mind that has remembered its own voice. But one last twist remains. What happens when the predator returns, not to control you, but to fix the damage they caused? You think the story ends when you walk away, but the predator knows the final move. They do not return with chaos. They return with concern. They come back not as the attacker, but as the healer of the wounds they made. This is the final phase, the restoration trap. Here, the predator pretends to fix the damage they engineered. They speak the language of regret, responsibility, and emotional maturity. You hear the words you always wished for, and the unfinished story in you reawakens. The wound they caused becomes the bridge they now try to cross again, and the mind, hungry for closure, mistakes repetition for repair. The first restoration lever is borrowed accountability. They admit small wrongs to hide the larger system. They apologize for tone, not for control. They regret misunderstandings, not manipulation. They use the word we instead of I, so blame feels shared. Shared blame always leads to shared healing, and shared healing always leads to reunion. The second restoration lever is emotional refund. They give back the peace they once stole, and it feels like love. You forget it was never theirs to give. Your body relaxes, your guard lowers, and the old bond reactivates like muscle memory. Relief is mistaken for repair, and hope takes the leash again. A single moment of validation can revive a whole pattern. The third restoration lever is rebranded future. They promise change, but rewrite the same cycle with softer words. They speak of growth, depth, and starting fresh, but the structure stays untouched. They offer a future where the cage has curtains, not locks. A decorated prison still confines, but now it flatters the prisoner. Flattery feels like freedom to a heart still healing. The fourth restoration lever is selective amnesia. They remind you of the good times, how much was built, how much could return. They avoid mentioning extraction, identity loss, emotional debt. Nostalgia replaces evidence, and memory becomes biased toward comfort. The brain remembers pleasure faster than pain, and they count on that. Your own memory becomes their lawyer. The fifth restoration lever is emotional guilt reversal. They say, I am trying, why are you distant? Suddenly you feel cold for protecting yourself. Your boundary looks like punishment. Your distance looks unfair. You start comforting the person who damaged you, just to prove you are not cruel, and the loop quietly restarts. But this time, you already know the map. You have seen the chaos stage, the identity stage, the extraction stage, the erasure stage, the substitution stage. You know the pattern, and patterns cannot hide once seen. You do not need to attack. You only need to refuse repetition. The end of the story is not revenge, not confrontation, not dramatic exit. The real ending is definition followed by detachment. Define what was real, what was illusion, what was taken, what was learned. Do not argue, do not prove, do not negotiate clarity. Clarity is not something you request. It is something you claim. The predator cannot fix what they never intended to heal. They can only maintain the system or rebrand it. But a rebuilt self no longer needs their apology, because the real closure is internal. Closure is not a moment. It is a decision. A decision to stop renting identity from someone who profits when you doubt it. You do not win by exposing them. You win by becoming someone who no longer fits their design. They cannot drain what is not offered. They cannot rewrite what you have already named. They cannot return to a door that no longer opens. The final freedom is not escape. It is recognition. Recognition that your peace does not depend on their approval. Recognition that your worth is not measured in sacrifice. Recognition that your clarity is not cruelty. The story does not end with them losing control. The story ends with you remembering you never needed to be controlled at all. And once that truth settles, the system dissolves. Not because they changed, but because you finally did.